My name is Maggie Butler. I live here in the Myrtle Beach area. And first of all, I'd like to share a dream. I saw Baba in my dream last night. He looked lovely and he gradually merged into a child he had been standing next to. In preparing to meet Robin today, I had the image of myself as a tiny goldfish that Baba was scooping up into his net. It feels kind of like Christmas morning. That's how eager I am to see what awaits. Telling my story, what is the beginning? One place is a date, 1980. It was 11/10, my son's birthday, Durham, North Carolina. That's one beginning. Another would be in the fall of 1981 when I went to Toccoa, Georgia in September. That year it was in September. Kitty Davey, Charles Haynes, and Phyllis Frederick were the speakers. Or it could be that the beginning is the first trip to Cherry Grove in 1952, the summer, and I was there with my family. Since music and poetry and writing have been important throughout this lifetime, it seems like a good idea to start with the poetry. The title of the poem I chose, it's a Rumi poem. The title is Who Says Words with My Mouth? Who says words with my mouth? All day I think about it. Then at night I say it. Where did I come from and what am I supposed to be doing? I have no idea. My soul is from somewhere else. I'm sure of that and I intend to end up there. This drunkenness began in some other tavern. When I get back around to that place, I'll be completely sober. Meanwhile, I'm like a bird from another continent sitting in this aviary. The day is coming when I fly off, but who is now in my ear? Who hears my voice? Who says words with my mouth? Who looks out with my eyes? What is the soul? I cannot stop asking. If I could taste one sip of an answer, I could break out of this prison for drunks. I didn't come here of my own accord, and I cannot leave that way. Whoever brought me here will have to take me back. This poetry, I never know what I'm going to say. I don't plan it. When I'm outside the saying of it, I get very quiet and rarely speak at all. Another really important piece of writing for me when I first came to the Mayer Center in 1981, in the fall of that year, is a song of the new life. This poem entered my life like a bell ringing. It eloquently described a life that seemed to somehow mirror my own. The copy of this song of poetry was falling apart at the seams. Perhaps no one would care if I took it home with me, which I did. In August of 1987, I made my first of 9 trips to India. There's a 1,000-page volume I never completed about those trips. Maybe someday a magic will make it into fewer words. And I'd like to read this, even though it's kind of long. And I'm going to start with the paragraph before the song. And it comes from The God Man by C.B. Purdon. During this particular period, Baba was sweeping, washing utensils, helping in the kitchen, and carrying loads generally, and continued to give instructions and explanations of the life before them. On one occasion, during the course of discussion, when there were some angry remarks, Baba asked Nilu and Ghani to pinch his ears, Baba's ears. On the 31st of October, Dr. Ghani wrote in Hindustan a song which Baba approved. A free English version is as follows, Song of the New Life. Listen to the silent words of Meher Baba. The life of all lovers of God is in these words. You who are serious to follow the new life will renounce your ephemeral existence. We have taken to this life in which we rely only upon God. Our will is strengthened by our oath. We merely sing the song of hopelessness. We invite all calamities and difficulties. We neither wail over lost hopes or complain about promises, or covet honor, or shun disgrace. Backbiting is ended, and we do not fear anyone. This is a tenor of our new life. No confusion in the mind now. Neither are any ties left. Pride, anger, lust, and greed are sloughed off. No religion for any of us, nor care for physical and mental aims. The sheiks and the Brahmins are now in the same boat. There is for us no small or great. Neither disciple, master, nor godhood exists. Brotherliness is the link and our common enjoyment of suffering. This world or the next, hell or heaven, we are no longer concerned with. Shaktis and siddhis, occultism and miracles, we are no longer plagued with. All false impressions have been purged from the mind. Now we live in the active present. Dear ones, take seriously the words of Baba. Although now I'm on the same level with you, yet all orders from me, good, bad, or extraordinary, you should carry out immediately, leaving the results to God. Even if the heavens fall, do not let go the hand of truth. Let not despair or disappointment ravage and destroy the garden of your life. You beautify it by contentment and self-sufficiency. Even though your heart be cut to bits, let a smile be on your lips. Here I divulge to you a truth. Hidden in your empty hands is treasure untold. Your beggarly life is the envy of kings. God exists, indeed, and true are the prophets. Every cycle has an avatar and every moment a wali. For us, however, it is only hopelessness and helplessness. How else can I describe to you what our new life is? Baba's talks went on day after day, for every detail was gone into. And that's the long version of my story. And in Finding God in North Carolina, there's the short version. And I would just end by saying that some of the people that have been so helpful to me in this lifetime, I thought a lot about when I was writing this and thinking about what I wanted to say. And rather than mentioning any friends by name, because Baba says he's the real friend. I didn't know I was going to say this part, but losing my dad when I was so young, I think if he were here, he would say that I did a good job. And he used to do he was a teacher, a professor, and he used to do his themes like this. And one day as a little kid, I said, why does you have that F on the outside of that paper? And he said, he couldn't spell. He misspelled a word, so I gave him an F. I think I was about 8. I was like, wow, I better be good in spelling. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Robin.
So I want to hear some of the specifics of what brought you to open to Baba or to know about him. If you want, it's totally up to you, but I'm just curious.
Okay. Well, in 1980, my son was 9, and it was November the 10th, and he's going to be 50 on November the 10th this year. And Greg and I have a wedding anniversary on November the 10th. Somehow that's been a big date, but I was living in Carborough, North Carolina, near Chapel Hill, and David wanted to have a slumber party, and I said, okay. We had a small basement, a small house and a small basement, so he invited some boys from the Quaker school he was going to. And all the mothers came, and some of them came in these fancy cars, and we had a very modest home. And then one boy's mother didn't come, and his name was Dean. And the boys were playing happily, so I didn't worry about it. I was a pretty laid-back kind of mom, I think, back then. And when the other mother came, she was about this tall. That's an exaggeration, but she's not very tall. Her name is Carol. And she came to pick up Dean, and I said, well, they're playing. If you want to, come in and sit down and talk. And she did. I had a small couch, a little 2-seater couch. And she sat down next to me, and she's just had such a presence that I was really glad, that she was late. And we just started talking, and our boys liked each other and got along well together. Dean a little older than David. So when she left, I remembered her visit, and I remembered her presence. I think that's the word to use. She just was a quiet person, which I am until you get to know me. So we talked about the possibility of a carpool, because it was a private Quaker school, small school in Durham, outskirts of Durham. And then I moved, and actually moved closer to where she and Dean were staying. We had a rental place near Duke University campus, and we said we should get together for lunch. And after a few weeks or months, I don't remember exactly, we did. We got together for lunch. And she said, would you like to come back to my house? I have composed a song, and would you like to hear it? And I said, sure. And I just remember going into that small house just off the east campus of Duke University, and listening to her song, and really liked it. And she said, and it was a grand piano in this tiny house, and she said, well, I have a little bedroom here in the back, and it's like a sitting room in the daytime. Would you like to go in there and sit? And I said, okay. And it was very cozy, and I felt very welcome, very relaxed. And it turns out that Carol and I had both studied a kind of co-counseling where you work with the peer, and you take turns, and one might listen to 10 minutes, and the other one listen to 10 minutes, and you just do all kinds of things in your 10 minutes or 15. You can act, you can do whatever, you read a poem, you can do whatever you want to in your time with your peer counselor. So we decided that we'd do that day. We'd just have a spontaneous kind of chit-chat. And I said, well, I'm going to sit on the rug. I'm much more comfortable on the floor. And she said, that's fine. I don't remember where she sat. And I became aware of a photograph that was over on this side of me. And I remember saying, well, who are these people here in this photograph? And the only name I remember is Charles Haynes. That's the only name I remember from that photograph, because I put my hand there and I said, I think I know that man. And she said, that's Charles Haynes. That's a Georgia Meher Baba group. Maybe that's how she said it. And I don't remember the name Meher Baba being there at that point. And when it was about time to leave, I guess I'd been in her home maybe an hour, and we'd already been at lunch an hour, so I'm sure it was probably getting close to time to pick up the children. I turned, and there was a bureau there, and I said, well, what's this on top of the bureau in this plastic box? And she said, that's Meher Baba's Sadra, and I didn't know what that was, but I remember putting my hands on the box and thinking, oh, it looks very precious, and somebody really taken the time to ensure that it's kept precious. And she said, we have a group here in Durham, and it's a Meher Baba group, and if you have a meeting in your house, and they're not usually big meetings, but if you have a meeting in your house, you have Baba Sadra there, and then the next person who has a meeting, they take it to their house. Oh, isn't that lovely, that it gets to travel to different homes. I really, really like that idea. At that time in 1981, I don't think that the Chapel Hill group actually had a meeting place. What I remember, and I remember Jay Shower for this, and he knows he's a part of my story. I told him once. I remember going into the room where we were meeting in a teacher's home. I don't remember her name. And Jay was being so loud in one room that I actually got up and left that room and went and got in the other room, because he was speaking very passionately about something, and I didn't know him, so I didn't know what it was. I just knew it was a little loud for me. And later on, we all kind of gathered around, and we had some relaxing time, and it wasn't so heated, but they were trying to decide, I think, where to have a Baba local center with the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area. That's my memory. And so I kind of teased Jay years later. I said, you were part of my Baba story, and I never told him exactly what his part was. But he did say to me that day, I said, Carol's going to go to this gathering in Toccoa, Georgia, this Southeast gathering, and I said, they've been practicing for the play, and it just so happens that Carol needed a place to live, so she and her son Dean moved into my basement, and she brought her piano, and they said, well, we need a place to practice, and I said, okay, so they came to practice, and then somebody was saying they didn't know if they could show up, and I said, well, can I help? And it just kind of went like that. And I said, well, Carol, they said it was full, I'd have to get on a waiting list. And Jay that day said to me, oh, you won't have any trouble, a single woman going by herself, you won't have any trouble getting in. I thought, oh, good, because Carol offered me a ride, and I'll go. And one of the first things that happened is they showed a film. No, one of the first things that happened is I walked in, and there on the stage was a huge face of Meher Baba, and I thought, my, what is that? You know, why is it so big? I didn't think about that anymore. But I was glad that I got in, and I felt comfortable enough so that I didn't feel like I needed anybody to, you know, kind of like show me around or anything like that. I just kind of got into the flow, and if there was something I wanted to sign up for, I did. One small group discussion was led by Charles Haynes, and like I said, I already felt like he felt new, you know, felt like somebody I knew. Kitty Davy gave a talk. I don't remember anything that she said. Phyllis Frederick gave a talk. I remember a Baba story that she shared. Charles Haynes, when he had his small group discussion, talked about a situation in which he used a story. And it really, really caught my attention. So after listening to his sharing and then the other people sharing, and being a shy person in a group, I just waited. And then I said, could you tell us more about life on the edge? And he said, that's the subject of my talk tomorrow. So I was definitely going to go to that talk. And the story he told, as best I can remember it, going back to 1981, 40 years ago, is that there are two characters. And one character is in a chair, and he's leaning back in the chair, and he's kind of tilted on the back two legs. And the other character in the story comes approaching him and sees this man leaning back. He said, look out, you know, there's something behind you, you're not paying attention. And the first man just goes on sitting there. He doesn't say anything, he doesn't respond. So then the other person comes a bit closer, and he says, really, seriously, you should look out right behind you. There's a big drop, and you're perched right at the edge of that big drop. And the man finally spoke, and he said, oh, there's only one place to fall, and that's into the arms of God. And that definitely got my attention. I was taken to church as a young person by my mother. My grandfather was a Methodist minister, very, very kind, sweet man. I never felt really drawn to Jesus or the Christ. I couldn't relate to golden hair and blue eyes. But I liked things about the Presbyterian Church. I liked going to the mental hospital in Raleigh. At that time it was called Dick's Hospital. And we would go Christmas caroling. I liked my Sunday school teacher. He seemed like a very kind and just normal person. He didn't ever talk about Jesus. I don't really remember what we talked about, but he worked for the Raleigh News and Observer. I think that was the paper that he worked for. It was one of the two, either that one or the other Raleigh paper. And having a father who was an assistant professor, and having had a very close relationship with my dad through books and music, I felt very comfortable with my Sunday school teacher. But I never really could quite come into that kind of organization, that structure. I did join that church when I was 11. My father said, no, I grew up in the church and you don't have to do anything if you don't want to. I did it to please my mother. She was not particularly religious, but she thought it was a good idea. And it just seemed very dry and not anything I was interested in. I'm kind of skipping around just a little bit, but then when I first got married, I was 22, and we went on a honeymoon, a short honeymoon, to Blowed Rock, North Carolina. And I love books, and I like library sales of used books. And I was browsing a table. My first husband was somewhere else. I don't remember where he was. Maybe parking the car. And I picked up this book on the table, and it said, The Life of Buddha. I thought, wow, wonder what that's about. Now, there was a great photo, I still have it, a frontispiece that had a nice photo of Gautama Buddha. And I read it, and I really liked that story. So when I went to Toccoa and these people were talking about Meher Baba, that didn't seem weird or strange. It just seemed like they were very loving and kind people, and I felt very safe and comfortable with them. One woman, she's deceased, her name was Jean. She was a psychologist. She ended up being one of my roommates because I was registered late, and the place they gave me was a porch, which was fine with me. And Jean and I both slept on the porch. She had her bed and I had my bed. So she, was observing me. I didn't know she was observing me. She was a psychologist. I don't know what she knew about Meher Baba. I have no really idea about that. But when we were leaving, she saw me walking out to the car to get in Carol's car, and she said, don't let her drive, talking about me. And Carol just kind of looked at her. She said, she's walking with her feet about 2 feet off the ground. So that was Jean's concept of me at that time. I did meet Kitty Davy there, thanks to Carol Gunn. She said, would you like to meet Kitty? I had cats all my life growing up until I don't even know what age. I said, sure. And here's this short, chubby woman, friendly. She says, I can't do a British accent at all. She says, I was wondering if I would meet somebody new. And Carol said, well, I just wanted you to meet my friend, Maggie. Maggie's my Baba name. My mother gave me the name Margaret. And she said, you must bring her to the Meher Center. And that's all I remember about that. That was before I was walking 2 feet off the ground or whatever. So we go back, we're on the way home, and Carol's son Dean was in an accident. It was not a serious accident, but he was in a kind of a fender bender type accident. And she got that news on the road as we were approaching Durham, and my home in Durham. And a few days passed, and I said, well, when can you take me to the Meher Center? When can we go to the Meher Center? And she's, mother of a young child. I guess he's 10 by then. My kids were with their dad at that point. And they had been with him, I guess, about 2 months. And she just had, she was booked in she's still that way. She's a very popular, kind person. And I said, well, I think I would like to just go ahead and go anyway. I won't wait for you to be ready. And she said, okay, but she said, sometimes, you can get a ride. And I didn't really want to take a ride with somebody else. I'd had my ride, with Carol. And so I said, well, okay, but I think I can do it, on my own. And she said, okay. And I don't remember too much else until right at kind of the last minute. I left out a big part. You had to write Kitty a letter before you could come to the center during that time. That's 81, still in the fall of 81, October of 81. The gathering, I think, was September 30th that year. They had it in the fall. And so I wrote my letter to Kitty. I didn't tell her everything about myself. I just told her a little bit so that I could get my interview. I had no idea what that would be like. I knew she was somebody pretty important and pretty special, but she was not the person I remembered. The person I remembered was Charles. The only time I ever fell out of the bed in my life that I can remember happened at the center, my first night on the center, in that one cabin where they have, women staying, and they have single beds. I just got up and got back in the bed. And the next morning, I called to, make a time to go and see Kitty, and Carol's brother, Barry Alpert, happened to be there, and he was going to see Kitty too. And he said, let's walk over together. And I thought, great, we'll walk over together. He seems obviously to know her and to, be comfortable with her. And maybe he'll go first and I can just, kind of sit down and relax. Well, of course, wouldn't you know it, we get to the door and he knows exactly what he's doing. He said, you go first. Because he probably wanted to visit with Kitty and maybe they were even going to have tea and lunch. I don't know. So I went first, and we sat in her living room there at Delruba, and I remember when you first come into the door to the living room, she sat in a chair over here, and I went over there. I didn't sit on a couch or anything. I just went over there for my interview. I felt like it was a job interview in a way. It just seemed weird. And she asked me a few questions about myself, and she asked me a few questions about my first husband. We were separated. We were not divorced yet, we were separated. And I remember at one point she said, well, I don't think that's the whole story. And she was absolutely right. It's very hard for me to be comfortable to tell the whole story with somebody who feels like they're interviewing me or I'm supposed to have an interview. So she said, well, do you have any questions? That was the very end of my interview. And I said, well, I just wish I knew what he wanted with me, this Meher Baba. And lucky me, she said, well, why don't you go to the Lagoon Cabin and have a talk with him about that? And I thought, what a good idea. I don't have to do an interview with the person, I can just go to this cabin and have a talk with him about it. I mean, really. And I have to tell you, I'm leaving out so much of my story that has to do with backstory and being depressed and all that kind of stuff, because that's so long ago, it's backstory. But I did go into the Lagoon Cabin, and this is the part that's in Finding God in North Carolina, because I was living in Durham at that time, and I consider myself a part of the Chapel Hill group, even though I wasn't there long before I was on the road. Baba did speak to me when I was in the Lagoon Cabin. It's still my favorite place on the center, besides walking to the beach. That's another part of my life that's been very, very special and very important to who I am, is nature. And when Baba spoke to me, I didn't hear actual words coming out of his mouth, but in here I heard his message for me. And when I did meet Mara, my first trip to India in 1987, she gave me lots of attention. And she told me a story. She held me back, even though I was trying to be first on the bus because I didn't like to be last. But I waited because I knew Mara was somebody really, really special. And I interrupted her. She was talking with two Indian women, and I knew the horn was going to be any minute. And I'm just waiting because Jane Brown or Kathy Riley, I don't remember, said, you know, you can get a bit of Baba's hair if you talk to Mara. And I wasn't going to be, I was in India for a month that August. And I wanted my chance to have Mayor Baba's hair. So I was waiting for Mara, but I interrupted and I said, you know, could I? And when I started to say, could I? She said, can you wait a minute? I said, yes. And I moved away so they could finish their conversation. And very quickly, she was done with the conversation. And I'm sure I told her why I wanted the hair, and that, you know, that was my last day at Marizad, and I was leaving either the next day or the day after that, but last Marizad day. And she skipped down the hall to get Baba's hair. She opened the dresser drawer. She took out the little pink envelope. And I think between what I heard Baba say in the Lagoon Cabin here and what Mara told me there, while all of us calling people and the bells ringing and it's time to get on the bus and it's time to depart and all of that. And I think that I probably have, between the short version and the long version, told everything I can think of to say, except for about the last trip to India. It was 2002, and Alba died while we were there. He passed on while we were there, and we were able to be a part of that, bringing his body into Old Mandalay Hall, and Greg got to help with helping to support the wall in between where Erich's body was and where Alba's body would be. And I had the chance to throw dirt in there. So maybe I'll get back to India again, I don't know. 9 trips was a lot. I'm still afraid of flying, but I went 9 times anyway. The first time I came to the center, I did have somebody that needed to ride, and her baby or child, young child. And I don't remember them. They were in the car, but I don't remember them. I remember driving into the center, and it felt like that road was home. It still feels like home. I told Mayor Baba that I would like to have a place like the Lantern Cabin and live there. And I didn't think really any more about it. It was one night when there was something happening at the library, and I just Felt like I wanted to go back and be in the lantern cabin by myself. And Greg stayed for whatever was happening. It was 20 years ago or something. And then I didn't think about it anymore. But the longing was there. So 15 years ago, last June, we did come here to live. And I guess I never, after that, thought of any other place as home.
So you're going to make me ask you.
What?
What did he say? What did Mira say?
He said, love me more and more. And Mara said, your love for him pleases us. I thought, I like him, you know, but love him? She said some other things to me that are pretty personal. She told me 3 times she had met me before, and finally the 3rd time she said it must have been in my dreams. Because I said, no, I haven't been here. I haven't been here. One of my main journals that will still be there at the bottom of the pile if I ever get rid of all the other ones, the one that will remain, if there's only one left, is that first trip to India in August of '87. I had a month. It was the only time I had a month, was the first trip, and I went with another woman, a friend. And it just, I mean, Erich Jesawala, he was so much a part of my life in all those trips to India until he was gone by the time we went that last one. But that was, that August '87 trip was like a love feast. Erich said, oh, the Mexicans are coming, we'll get the rain now. And we did. We were slipping and sliding down the hill, singing Gata Jalo to, once the Mexicans came. The music was fabulous. Jim Meyer was there. Trying to remember Lourdes' husband's name, Rafael Villafania was there. Ted, of course. I think Jamie Newell might have been there. I'm not positive about that, but I'm pretty sure he might have been there. And I was up the hill in the morning. I was helping clean the tomb. I thought it was my only trip. So those are the main things.